Peace. What's good? How y'all doing? This is ZaZa Ali. Today is Saturday, November 16th. I pray that this message reaches you in the best of health, spirit, and mind. This topic is something that I need to get off my chest because I've been seeing all of the stuff that's been floating around on the internet. A couple of videos that have been sent to me in the past couple of days by 20 to 30 people, the video by the sister Egypt, and then the video of the sister in Houston as far as somebody trying to kidnap her. Let me just start off by saying I'm going to put this video up in two pieces. The first part is going to be about sex trafficking, and then the second part is going to be about fear-based consciousness. I am uniquely qualified to talk about this subject, and I'm expecting to get backlash because 9 times out of 10, I'm coming from a different perspective, especially as a woman. So I'm kind of used to it now, but I wrote about this in my book, Plagues of Dysfunction, which has been out for almost 5 years now. I also was screaming in the wind and using my platform 5 years ago to talk about this particular subject, and even got into a public altercation with a well-known person who will remain nameless. And in the middle of that interview, in a very impassioned conversation, it got derailed because of whatever reasons. And the spotlight was taken off of the importance of the topic of sex trafficking, and 5-second clip of something that I said, and people ran with that instead of focusing on and emphasizing the underlying point of that conversation, which was that as a people, we need to be extremely alarmed about the sex trafficking industry, and that we needed all hands on deck. That was like 3 years ago. So this is not new. This has been happening for a long time, and I don't say that to say that it's not important, that this is a topic of importance, that this is trending now, that people are, focusing on this, and that more attention is being brought to it. I think that is great, but let me be clear. This has been happening in the Black community for a long time, and we have been turning a blind eye to it for a long time. We have been watching young women and our women being paraded around in our communities, paraded around in our music, paraded around on the internet for a long time, and we've been standing by, and we have not really made any valiant attempts in order to correct this continuous trauma and dysfunction in our communities. We have our people are so fucking hypocritical, and please pardon my language, and please excuse, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I really need to say this. We are so hypocritical. And when I say we, I'm talking about the culture. I'm talking about the collective consciousness. When it comes to how we treat our women, when it comes to how we as women treat ourselves, human beings are an ecosystem. I keep saying this. I cannot, sometimes I feel like I'm wasting my breath. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to the wind, because what's common sense to me seems to be rocket science to so many people and to the collective culture. We are so hypocritical when it comes to the way that we think about, the way we talk about, the way we treat, the way we regard our women. Our men love their daughters, they love their grandmothers, they love their mothers, they love their wives, they love their aunties. But when it comes to the broader scope of women and understanding the importance of the messages that they convey and how they carry themselves and how they project, and the imagery that they show of women beyond their personal families, there is no real collective responsibility on behalf of our men and our women too. Case in point, T.I. I love T.I. You guys have heard me talk about him continuously on my platform. I think he's a very intelligent brother. I don't know nothing about all the stuff as far as him being a snitch. I don't care about none of that stuff. Somebody has publicly said about me that they had paperwork saying that I was a federal agent, a federal informant. That is a flat out lie. It has never been proven. It has never been shown. And people still to this day say that like it's an actual fact. And it's not, it's a lie. So I don't believe what people say about, especially celebrities, just because I read it somewhere. And I don't care. T.I. recently, I was doing some housework around the house, And I was listening to his podcast. I listened to 2 podcasts back to back. I listened to Too Short, and then I listened to Centoya Brown. It was so, and I don't, he's so intelligent, and he probably didn't even make the connection. And this is what I'm talking about, the hypocrisy of our community and how we regard our women and how we don't understand how our behavior affects the culture. He has T.I. on, and they're talking about pimping and hoeing, and you know what I'm saying, all of the stuff that, you know, I grew up on Too Short, you know, I'm from Oakland, so all of the stuff that comes with that world and that life. And then the very next week he has Centoya Brown on, and he's talking about, you know, she's making the connection about the bigger picture as far as the culture and how women are treated and how it's connected. He's talking about, you know, the sex trafficking industry in Atlanta and how he wants to get involved and help, blah, blah, blah. But it was very hypocritical. If you want to talk about the sex trafficking industry and what's happening, why not have that conversation with Too Short? Why not ask Too Short, this man who is known for, you know, promoting pimping and hoeing and promoting that whole culture? Why not have a conversation with him so that you can reach the young brothers and the men that actually resonate with that type of consciousness, with that level of consciousness? And then immediately following, you have Centoya Brown on, who's a victim of sex trafficking, who had a pimp that was pimping her out as a minor. Like, it's the schism and the dysfunction and the inability for us to make the connection about the most simple things that really, really, really frustrates me. Our whole culture right now, for the most part, not our whole culture, 75% of our culture, Black people in America, our music, our social media content, our movies, our media is promiscuous. It's heavily sexually emphasized. We got strippers now that are setting the tone for the culture. We got concubines now that are being regarded as queens. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. It just is what it is. You know what I'm saying? And I don't make the judgment or the assessment based on my own personal standards or me thinking I'm better than anybody. I listen to the music. I'm watching the Netflix special Rhythm and Flow or whatever it was, about the, you know, the reality TV show where they chose the rapper, blah, blah, blah. Cardi B is in one of the latter seasons. They're just having a random conversation. Now, mind you, I consider this like a family show where children can watch, and the audience look like there's teenagers and young people. And Cardi B just out of nowhere starts talking about her pussy on a I just was like, when did we get to a point as a culture? And the question is I know the answer to the question, but I'm asking a rhetorical question. When did we get to this level as a culture and as a people where women stopped regarding themselves as sacred? I'm not even talking about men at this point. I'm talking about us. And I've said this before. As women, we cannot objectify ourselves and get mad when we get treated like an object. Now, I'm not excusing the rape culture. I'm not excusing sex trafficking. I'm not excusing the pimps. I'm not excusing none of the culture. But I'm saying that if we experienced, and we did, 500 plus years, and there's even an argument that it went beyond that, but let's just stick to that. 500 years of sexual deviancy, sexual trauma, sexual pain, not just for women, men as well. African slaves were raped by white men. You know what I mean? There was a culture of savagery and molestation that is still to this day exists when it comes to men and boys being molested. And I talked about that in Plagues of Dysfunction as well. We are an ecosystem. So what is happening to our sons, what is happening to our men, what is happening to our daughters, what is happening to our women, it affects us all. So we have a very promiscuous culture. We have we have women that are promoting nothing but sex, 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 pussy, ass, titties. Every other post on Instagram, every other post on Facebook is somebody shaking their ass, somebody talking about how good their sex is. Soft porn is all over Instagram and all over social media. Do you think that this is not directly tied to what is happening when it comes to young girls and women getting snatched off the street? Do you think that when Cardi B or some random Instagram model is on social media twerking and putting her ass all in the camera, and I'm not trying to single out Cardi B. I don't want you to take it that way, but she is spearheading a lot of this behavior. But she's definitely not the only one. Do you think that when these women are online carrying themselves and conducting themselves this type of way, that one of the 500,000 or 2 million or 5 million young boys or young men that's watching this, that it's not impacting them? That it's not impacting the way that they're dealing with women and that the way that they're dealing with girls? Who are these dudes that are snatching our daughters off the streets? You think they come from some underground tunnel in the middle of the night? They're in some kind of secret society that we don't know about? No, these are dudes that we know in our community and in our culture. We promote pimping, we promote hoeing, we promote all of this savagery as a culture, and then we stand back and say, oh my God, we got to be on alert. We need to be careful. Women, be careful about where you're going and what you're doing, because they're snatching women off of the streets. Why don't we talk about, I said this in the Science of Sex workbook, and I wrote this workbook specifically for this subject, specifically to start talking about and having a higher level conversation about sexual deviancy, how our children see sex. Not just wait until you're older when you have sex, not just stay a virgin until you find somebody that loves you, but the human ecosystem of sexual behavior and how it impacts us. It's not just about abortion statistics. It's about energy transference. It's about learning how to maneuver in a world that is teaching a woman and teaching girls that their only value is in how good their sex is or how nice their body is. Now, this thing with T.I., and I'm going to bring T.I. up again because he's been in the controversy with the situation with his daughter and the hymen thing. And here's my take on that. T.I. is like many, if not most of us. He wasn't raised with proper, adequate parenting, and I'm not judging his parents at all. I'm saying all of us who grew up in a war zone, who grew up in the ghetto, who grew up in black communities selling drugs or doing crime or just trying to survive, the whole struggle of coming up in that type of world, it creates a sort of mental dynamic for our parents, for all of us. T.I., like many, if not most of us, grew up in an environment where he was not properly taught the emotional and spiritual and mental well-being tactics to not only govern himself, but to be a parent. And I know this, I love his show with his family and all of that. And I've listened to his music before, and I've, I listened to his podcast. I know what I see. And that's not a judgment. It just is what it is. I could flip that and give an analysis of myself. So I'm not jumping on a bandwagon and throwing T.I. underneath the bus because, yeah, I think that shit is weird. Yeah, I think it's unnecessary, especially because his daughter is 18 years old, especially because he has women in his family that should be helping her to navigate and fine tune how she sees her body and how she interacts with boys and men. Everybody knows that the preacher's daughter was always the most off the hook. The more you try to control your children and keep them out of the loop of what's happening in the world, the more off the hook they're going to be. It is the way that human consciousness works. It's the way that human beings are wired. So the preacher's daughter, who kept her under lock and key, was 9 times out of 10 the most off the hook. So whenever she becomes a full-fledged woman and goes out into the world, and I hope this isn't her reality, you know what I'm saying? I hope that she's able to maintain a certain sense of dignity about herself based on who she is and becoming a woman and all of that. But this is my point about that. I'm not throwing T.I. underneath the bus. I think he's doing the best he can with the tools that he was given as a man. And this goes back to the entire infrastructure about how we see girls and women versus how we see boys and men. The real controversy is that when his son admitted to having sex, I think he was 14 years old, and it was a tongue-in-cheek kind of laughing type thing. So where's the value and the appreciation and the responsibility to the young 14 and 15-year-old girls that your son is having sex with? That's who we need. Why are you not concerned about them? Why are we not teaching our sons a level of respect and a different way of looking at our daughters and looking at our women? This is what when I talk about human beings being an ecosystem, it's all connected and it's all relative. And we are hypocritical as fuck when it comes to this subject. We promote the stripper culture. We promote the whole culture. We promote all of this negativity. 85% of rap music is very disrespectful towards women. And if it's not disrespectful, there's no real agenda to be loving and teaching and guiding and having a responsibility to girls and women. It's about the hustle. It's about money. It's about motivation as far as getting your money up. But as far as emotional and mental and spiritual well-being, we have completely dropped the ball as a people when it comes to creating an agenda and a conversation and momentum and a blueprint to elevate the mindset of the consciousness of our daughters and our women. So as far as the sex trafficking industry is concerned, and part 2 of this video is going to be about the fear-based consciousness. Yes, it is something that we need to be mindful of. Yes, it is a travesty that our daughters and our women are getting snatched off the street. It is no coincidence that Atlanta is the #1 market for sex trafficking in the United States, and is also the #1 industry and market for strip clubs. That's not a coincidence. That's something that really needs to explore, because everybody loves the fact that Atlanta is the pop-in as far as the strip culture is concerned. Everybody promotes that. Everybody loves that. It's in the music. It's everywhere. But we won't make the connection between the sex trafficking industry. And I was really disappointed when the Super Bowl was here that all of the rappers and all of the R&B artists and all of the entertainers from Atlanta did not take that opportunity to bring the spotlight to what is happening here to our daughters and our women. So yes, we need to be mindful of it, but it's not just about men snatching our daughters off of the streets. It is about that, don't get me wrong, but it's our culture. The culture that we live in is very disrespectful of our women. Y'all love pimps, y'all love Macs, y'all love these men that have a very disrespectful, subtle tone when it comes to women. You love women that disrespect themselves. You love women that promote the whole frequency. You love women that only talk about sex and talk about money and talk about prostitution is getting promoted in our music today. We are celebrating prostitution in our music, and it's on the radio. But when it starts trending, now we want to have our antennas up. It's hypocritical. We need a real cultural reset when it comes to the conversation about sex, about abstinence, about discipline. Where are the feminists? Where are the black feminists at? If your whole entire agenda is about protecting and guiding women, why is there no real black feminist agenda when it comes to sex trafficking and when it comes to teaching women not just about being aware of where you go when you're out and about, watching where you go when you get in your car and making sure your car door is locked? That's absolutely important. But where's the conversation about abstinence? Where's the conversation about being careful about who you give your body to? Where's the conversation about having control of yourself sexually and understanding the importance and the value of your body? This is part 1 of this video, and y'all pardon my passion, but I just, you know what I'm saying? These people keep sending me these videos and I'm watching this stuff, and it's all fear-based consciousness, and there's no real in-depth spiritual conversation about what's really happening in the bigger scheme of the culture. ZaZaAli.com is my website.